Good evening, everybody, and welcome to a very, very special night. Not only because we're going to hear shortly from one of the preeminent journalists in the world, but tonight marks a new chapter in the life of the School of Journalism, and I believe in the life of the university. I'm Howie Schneider, and I'm the Dean of the School of Journalism, and I'm very proud tonight to use this occasion to announce the official opening of the Marie Colvin Center for International Reporting at Stony Brook University. The mission of this center will be to inspire, train, and nurture the next generation of foreign correspondents, students who will learn how to report, produce, and write from overseas. We will send our students and our professors overseas to do this. We will create a journalist in resident program that will allow foreign correspondents who are in the line of fire to come here for a semester and teach and write. And this center will be a beacon that will continuously shed light and spotlight the need for vigorous and courageous and independent and accountable reporting about what's happening in the world. This center is named after an extraordinary person. Marie Colvin was one of the most talented, enterprising, and courageous news reporters of her generation. For the past 30 years, she traveled across the world, often behind enemy lines, often at great personal risk, to bring us the news from Chechnya, Kosovo, Iraq, Libya, Zimbabwe. In later years, she became identified by her trademark black patch that she wore after being wounded by shrapnel in Sri Lanka. At the age of 56, last February, Marie Colvin was killed covering the siege of homes in Syria. She was one of the few reporters who decided to stay and, in her words, bear witness for the rest of the world to what was being done to the population in that city. If there was a theme that ran through her work, it was often reporting on the real people, the women and children trapped in the crossfire of war. The night before she was killed, she appeared on BBC, she appeared on CNN, and she told a story from a hospital of a young baby who died. And she watched that baby die, and she said, "I can't do anything." What she could do was bring that story to the world. And that's what she did. And I can think of no better memorial and no better legacy to carry on her work than the establishment of this center at Stony Brook. I'm also very honored tonight to have with us for this special evening the family of Marie Colvin. And you should know that while she worked for many years for the Times of London, she was a correspondent there 25 years. And unfortunately, I'm not sure enough of us here in America got to see her work day in and day out. She was a daughter of Long Island. She grew up 15 miles from here in Oyster Bay, or 20 miles away. Her roots are on Long Island. What better way than Stony Brook, which has the only public school of journalism in the SUNY system, what better way to send a message that her work will not only be remembered, but carried on. And so tonight we have, and I want to acknowledge them here, we have Marie Colvin's mother, Rosemary. We have her sister Kathleen and her brother Bill. and we have her nephew with us, William. So I want to welcome all of them. The Colvin family has been very supportive of what we're doing here and will stay very involved with us as we move forward and make lots of plans. I also want to acknowledge our provost, Dennis Asanis, who's here in the audience, for his approval and support for the establishment of the center and why it's so important. Dennis, thank you so much. Now here's what's going to happen. I'm going to introduce one of our journalism professors, a young woman named Alana Azurnoy, who set out to be a foreign correspondent at the age of 23 and spent a decade reporting on the war in Afghanistan and on the war in Iraq, and then from other areas in the world, and she joined our faculty last January. She's going to introduce our speaker. Our speaker will take questions at the end of her talk, and then I am going to come back to the stage to make a very special announcement about the future of the center at the end of the program. So please join with me in welcoming Alana Azurnoy.
Thank you, Dean Schneider. Thank you so much to the Colvin family. We really could not have done this and would not have done this without you. I also want to thank a few of Marie's friends who are in the audience tonight. We have with us Toby Harnden, who is now just been named the Washington Bureau Chief of the Sunday Times. Congratulations, Toby. And Philip Sherwell, who is a very dear friend, was a very dear friend of Marie's, who is the Chief International Correspondent for the Sunday Telegraph in London, and he is on our steering committee and has been instrumental in helping us to set up the center. So thank you, Philip. Thank you so much. And welcome all of you. I just want to speak very briefly about Marie Colvin and about our guest speaker tonight. I had the honor of meeting both of them actually when I was working as a young reporter in various hot zones in the world. I'll speak first about Marie. She was really an exceptional woman. I mean, she was extraordinary. She was a force. And what was really incredible about her is that she used that force for good. She used it to help other people. As Dean Schneider said, she sent herself into the hardest and farthest corners of the world to tell the stories of people who were caught in the tide of history. She lived big. She did really big things. And she gave so much of herself to her colleagues, and especially to her younger colleagues, because she believed in mentoring. And it is in that spirit that we established the center at Stony Brook. We want to kick off the Marie Colvin Center Distinguished Lecture Series. And I know we're doing this at a time when our profession is undergoing turbulent change. And I personally believe that this is the exact time to put forth big ideas and to put all the heart and energy into making an impact, which is why I'm particularly excited to introduce tonight's speaker, Christiane Amanpour, because she is truly, truly an inspiring person who has done really big things with heart and with energy. She covered pretty much every major story that I can think of in the last 2 decades. She has covered every international conflict, interviewed every major world leader, and along the way won every single journalism television award, including 9 Emmys, 4 Peabodys, the Edward R. Murrow Award. I know I'm leaving out a lot. I met you, Christiane, over a decade ago in Kabul. I know you won't remember. I was very young and very green, but I remember. I was so inspired. You were this presence, this calm, graceful, determined presence in the middle of the chaos of the war. And seeing you there just totally inspired me to keep going, to keep working as an international correspondent. It said to me, well, if she's here, maybe I'm not so crazy to be here. And I really could not think of a more incredible person to kick off our lecture series. So, please join me in welcoming CNN's international correspondent and the anchor of ABC News, global affairs anchor for ABC News, Christiane Amanpour.
Thank you so much. I have a big smile on my face because I asked Ilana to make sure that they played, or you all played, Bridge Over Troubled Water, because I was really touched by the incredible obituary that Marie's editor had written in the Sunday Times last year, and it was entitled Sail On, Silver Girl. And he imagined what she would have done in her lull after coming out of Syria. And she had talked about her love of sailing, which those who knew her knew about, and that she had wanted to go perhaps across the Atlantic. And that was her way of relaxing and loving and doing things that were not just journalism. So I just decided that it would be nice to have that tune as we came in tonight. To Marie's mom and sister and brother and nephew, and to all of Marie's family, it is wonderful to see you here. And we are really staggered by your bravery and dignity and the way that you have not absorbed your sorrow, but transformed your sorrow into perpetuating your daughter, your sister's legacy, and to make sure that we know that she didn't die in vain, but to make sure that future generations will be able to use her and what she did as an example and as their template and as their classroom as they go out into this incredible profession that we all love and that she loves so much. Thank you to the Provost for your incredible dedication to this, Dean Schneider, Ilana, and to Marie's friends and colleagues who've come here for this evening. I remember, I just explain to you what these pictures are. This was Marie and myself and our cameraman Barclay Palmer and also producer Katie Hinman. We were sent to Libya at the time of the Arab Spring, and Marie I met there, and in fact we had discussed with Marie going because Libya had been quite closed before we all sort of started to land there in plane loads as the uprising started, and she was the one who managed to use her influence with the Ghadafi family, in fact, and with Ghadafi's son, Saif, who had begun to be known in the West, to make sure that they allowed us journalists in, because at that time they were still in charge, although they were teetering on the brink of falling. She persuaded the family to let journalists in, and we were amongst the first group that arrived in Tripoli. Others had come in from various different borders. And so that's where I saw Marie again, and it was the last time I saw her. And what she did and what we did was in that picture over there. That's me and Marie and our colleague from the BBC, Jeremy Bowen. And the fact that the three of us are sitting there together with this exclusive first and last interview on television and in print with Muammar Ghadafi speaks legions to Marie Colvin and what she was all about. We were very competitive. She was very, very competitive. But in a situation like this, we banded together and we both used our different, entrees and knowledge of the place and knowledge of him and his sons to get this interview. And I remember being in the hotel, the Rixos Hotel in Libya, where all hell was breaking loose all around us, March of 2011. And we both said to each other, if you get it, I'll share. And if I get it, you'll share. And we did. And I cannot tell you how rare that is. And that kind of collegiality is almost unheard of in this business when it comes to a major scoop like that. And then we let our male colleague join us. But anyway, it was a fantastic, fantastic moment, because there we were, really determined to get this story, to tell the story about the Arab Spring, and also to have a moment of friendship and a moment where we pooled our resources to get something done. And that is how I always thought of Marie. I met her many, many times on the road over my 20 years in the field. She had been there longer than me. And every time it was a real joy. And every time it was fun. Every time it was dangerous. Every time it was stressful. But there was something very special about knowing somebody like Marie. And many people have said this, but it's true. you know, when somebody like Marie Colvin has endured and survived for so long in the worst possible places, particularly, as we all know, after her injury in Sri Lanka, which left her without the ability to see in one eye, the fact that she survived that and came back, you just don't think this person is destructible. And so when she was killed, it was, I mean, I can't even begin to think what it was for her family. But for those of us who were her professional family, it was, I remember screaming when I heard it. I had been in Switzerland the week before, and our very, very good colleague, and it was about this time last year when we were in Switzerland. My son was at a student exchange there, and it was President's Day weekend. And the first terrible piece of news we heard that weekend was that our colleague Anthony Shadid had died. He had died of a massive asthma attack as he had been sneaking into Syria, along with his photographer Tyler Hicks, and was now at the end of his tour of duty there and was coming out. And he died of a massive asthma attack, and we just couldn't believe it, because again, he had been with us in the Arab Spring, covering so many of those stories. I had seen him in Cairo. I had had him as a guest on my This Week. At that time, I did This Week on ABC News on a Sunday morning from Cairo, and he was part of my round table, and that had been the last time I saw him. And he, again, was just such a spectacular journalist who had lived through so much. So that was a terrible, terrible shock. And then to come back, and barely a week later, to open my computer one morning and see the news of Marie's death, it was, I remember saying, this is too much. This is too much. The price is too high. And we were just stunned and staggered, the whole lot of us, and everybody who's been reading the obituaries and the outpouring of grief and appreciation and gratitude now knows what a special and unique individual Marie Colvin was. She died along with her French colleague, Remy Ochlik, and we've heard, if anybody cares to listen on the radio, the devastating tale by the surviving colleague, Paul Conroy, of how he managed to get out and what happened that night in Homs in Syria. He believes that they were deliberately targeted, and I'm sure that's true. Marie, as Dean Schneider said, had been on television that night and had delivered some of the most searing eyewitness accounts of this unspeakable suffering in Syria. And the Syrians don't like it. And the people who we report on don't like it when the truth is being told about them in their backyard, in real time. And the number of colleagues who we've lost in Syria right now, according to the Committee to Protect Journalists, dwarfs what we've lost in previous wars. And the number of injured, and the number of those who are still out there and still missing. And no word about them. And so those are the risks, and that is the ultimate price that people who are dedicated to telling the truth sometimes pay. So why do it? Why keep at it? 25 years, she had earned her stripes. She didn't have to prove anything anymore. But she did it, I think, and I know, because of the reason we all do it. Because we have to be there. Because there is no substitute for eyewitness news, for real people to go out and cover and gather real stories so that they can come back and tell you firsthand what went on. Because it's not okay to rely just on punditry, just on armchair warriors, just on people who have different opinions. It's not okay just to rely on the huge amount of wire services that are out there, of video services that are out there, of Twitter use that is out there, of Facebook and social media that's out there. That's part of the picture, but it's not the whole picture. It's not the way you tell the truth. It's not the way you satisfy your readers and you fulfill your duty as a journalist to simply rely on other people's work or to be derivative. The only way to be credible, the only way to make sure the truth is spread around and not somebody else's vision of what might have happened, is to be there. It's like what diplomats do. It's like what Chris Stevens was doing in Benghazi, Libya. It's dangerous, it's difficult, it's getting more and more dangerous and more difficult, but there really is no substitute. There's no substitute for being there. And the truth of the matter is that it does make a difference. It really does make a difference. Marie made a difference. If you read some of the words that were written after her death, for instance, John Williams, who was at the time the editor of BBC World News, he was saying that for a long time, viewers and public opinion in England was quite low when it came to understanding and knowing and caring about what was going on in Syria, which, by the way, 2 years on, has cost 60,000 Syrian lives, tens of thousands of people wounded, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people who've had to flee, a story that has really not been told in its full and that Marie was trying to tell and paint as full a picture as she possibly could. But when people like Marie were there, or when people like journalists from the BBC who snuck in and were able to tell some stories for a few weeks before they had to get out for fear of being killed, journalists from CNN who snuck in, journalists from CBS, journalists from all over who managed to go in for certain periods of time, then they could see the interest level raising. It's measurable. It's measurable. And so there's a huge burden on us who believe that the world needs to do the right thing, it needs to act, and I still think the world needs to act, and it's so shameful that this has gone on for so long and nobody has stepped in or lifted a finger to stop it. And the only people who are doing it are the journalists. In Bosnia, more than 20 years ago, that was my first baptism by fire. And along with many, many journalists, Marie included, we told that story every day, every week, every month, every year for the entire war. And at that time, our bosses saw fit to put it on the front page of the newspapers and in the A block at the top of the news every single day. And after a while, it made a difference. And after a while, it became untenable for our democracies, for our world leaders to watch this slaughter, the slaughter of innocents, without lifting a finger. And in the end, they did. It was late, but in the end, they did. One massacre too many happened, and it was too much, even for the politicians who did not want to do anything. And there was an intervention. The bad guys were pushed back. There was a peace process launched by the United States. My good friend, the late Richard Holbrooke, crafted the Dayton Accords. Then there was an intervention by a 60,000-strong NATO force led by the United States. 20,000 of those troops were the US troops. All of this stuff people said could never happen. It happened. There was a peace that lasts to this day. To this day, not one single NATO peace enforcement troop was killed in anger. There were accidents, there were deaths, but not a single one was killed in anger. And after that, and by the way, it's not perfect Bosnia, but there's an emerging democracy there, and in Serbia, and in Kosovo, all these places where they said it would never happen. And because of what journalists did in Bosnia, the world stepped in as a preventative measure in Kosovo next door. So before we saw ethnic cleansing and genocide in Kosovo, because of what happened in Bosnia, because our leaders could no longer afford to see the same happen again, they intervened, a preemptive measure. It was the world's first ever humanitarian intervention, and it worked. The war ended. Kosovo's free. Serbia's a democracy. The tyrant dictator Slobodan Milosevic was overthrown after the Kosovo War. And things are better. I believe that that is the power of good journalism. I believe that that is the power of people like Marie Colvin. And if you look now, Marie's not there anymore. Who's telling that story every single day from Syria? And it carries on. And no one's holding our leaders' feet to the fire. In Rwanda in 1994, there was a terrible genocide. The world didn't want to intervene, and there were not the journalists there at the time. And look what happened. In 3 months, 800,000 to 1 million people were slaughtered. I believe that that would not have happened if we'd all been there. So the power of being there and the power of not being there are equally enormous. And these are enormous responsibilities for all of us who take on this profession, because it is so powerful and because it is so, it can really make the difference between good and evil. I strongly believe that. And people have given their lives working in that strong belief. Marie and so many of our colleagues. But as difficult as it is, it's not all sadness and it's not all heartache and it's not all terror. It's also the most incredible profession. It's the most noble profession, I believe. Not only does it make a difference between life and death, but it is the sine qua non. You cannot have strong, robust democracies without strong, robust, independent, and rigorous press, even in this country. And we certainly know in emerging democracies and in dictatorships, without a rigorous press, what goes on, unexplored and unexamined. But there is also an incredible sense of mission and purpose. And I think any of you in this room who are pursuing journalism as your life's work, I wouldn't even say career, because it's a life's work, it's a passion, it's a calling. There are very few things that are better. And there's that camaraderie, and there's the competition, and there's the living on the edge in a very dramatic way, which is not to say, as everybody says, that we're all danger junkies and war junkies and addicted to this, that, and the other. I'll give you a little note about adrenaline. Everybody says, oh, it must be just adrenaline junkies. And the thing is, everybody knows, anybody who's, learns biology knows what adrenaline does. Adrenaline is the fight or flight mechanism. So when you're in danger, you better have some adrenaline. It's the difference between making it out or not in certain instances. So that's what adrenaline is all about. But whenever, and Ilana reminded me when she said she met me 10 years ago in Kabul, I hope I was as gracious as you say, but I strongly believe, and I tell young people who ask me all the time, how do I do this? And I tell them, look, it's very difficult now. It's much more difficult than when I started. I started at CNN in 1983, because now we've got shrinking resources in all our journalistic platforms. We've got shrinking real estate to put this information and news on, and we've got shrinking will to put it on. So it's very difficult to get in at the ground level and to move up, particularly if you want to be a foreign correspondent. So I have actually told most of the people who come up to me in the last 10 years, I say, just go there, be careful, but go there and do it. And that is what so many people have done, and many people have, having been out there, got some experience and, earned a few stripes, then they're able to find their footing in a more formal way. But that often is the way to do it. I remember, and since I'm in a university here, talking to you all, and this college, this school is going to be available, hopefully very soon. I think that it's also really important, and Professors Zimmerman and Zimmerman will know this firsthand, to start at the very bottom and to not want to rush the event, rush the story, rush the journey. There's nothing more satisfying than having this desire to do something. I wanted to be a foreign correspondent. But when I came to CNN was 3 years into its infancy, and it was really, even at that time, a startup. And it was the most fabulous place to learn on the job. You know, many of us did not go to graduate school. Many of us came out, including myself, of university with a bachelor's and decided that A, we had to earn our living, and B, this was a great way to learn on the job. And I went to Atlanta. They interviewed me over the phone because at that time, of course, and somebody so low ranking as an entry level, there's no way they're going to fly you around for interviews. And they interviewed me on the phone, and they asked me about 10 questions about, you know, foreign affairs. And one of them was, what's the capital of Iran? Well, I knew that since I was Iranian, and it was in the midst of the hostage crisis. So I got that question right, and I went down to CNN in Atlanta, and I'll never forget, the main recruiter, the main HR person, I thought I was going down to be sort of on the technical side, to do what we call fonts, all these words that you see coming up under people's, they write people's names, they write the weather, all the words and things you see on the air. I thought that's what I was going to do, because that's what they told me I was going to do. But when I arrived, they said, oh, you're foreign. We've got a space for you on the foreign desk. There's just been somebody who's left, and we really need to fill it. So that was fantastic. And for me, it was a series of just working my way up methodically, plowing my way up, doing anything that was going, never saying no to anything, and never thinking that, you know, somehow somebody owed something to me, or I was entitled to shoot up the ladder, you know, in an unseemly and too fast way. And I think that that's something that I really try to impress on so many young people today, because there's a little bit of a distorted vision of how you get success. And many people think that, you know, you can just have an idea and have a desire and, you know, suddenly be at the top of your profession. It doesn't really work like that. And if it does work like that, A, it's very rare, and B, it's generally unsustainable. I think you really have to build up the knowledge. You really have to learn and be experienced. And then when you get to where you hope to be and get to where, you know, your ambition is, then you feel, wow, okay, I've earned it. I'm here. I know something. I'm confident. I can hold my head up with my colleagues. And apart from anything else, the journey is a huge amount of fun. So I always say that that is a really important thing to be aware of when you're beginning at the outset of this journey. And then I say also, you know, once you get to where you want to be, again, you know, the questions start. The questions about what do you do now with this role that you have, with this platform that you have. You know, it's not just to rack up miles. It's not just to be out there for the sake of being out there. Surely there's a bigger reason. And I've identified some of that in my previous comments about what is the role of this medium, whether it's radio, television, you know, whether it's newspapers, whether it's social media, whatever it might be. What is your role? What is your place in society? How do you help? How do you fit in? What is your role in the community? Because we are all, after all, a community. And journalism plays a huge part, not just in informing that community, but in keeping, I think, a community together. And we've seen it even here over the last several months when Hurricane Sandy, for instance, the last big thing that really slammed into this part of the United States. The journalism, I thought, was remarkable. The stories were incredible, individual stories that were told from a ground level. I thought did a lot to keep the community together through hardship and through pain and through a struggle to get back on their feet. And even now, if you turn on the radio like I do every morning, you see the young journalist from NPR who's making her way, or she's just finished, but spent a while making her way up Hurricane Sandy's path 3 months later to keep us all updated on what had happened or what hadn't, promises that were kept, promises that weren't, whether people were still living, outside or without electricity or without construction, whatever it might be. And I thought that, it's really, really important that. And to constantly question what you're doing with this great, powerful platform. And I also think that courage comes into it too, not just physical courage, which Marie had in absolute bucketfuls and bucket loads. And so many people who go out and do this job, really put their lives on the line, sacrifice not just their physical lives, but their health as well, and their family lives, and so much is at stake. But it's not just that, it's also moral courage and intellectual courage. It's really difficult to question people who are in power, for instance. It's really difficult to be brave enough to ask the tough questions that all of you, all our viewers and listeners, want asked. It's so tough to be in that chair opposite somebody and ask the question that will either get you kicked out or banned or whatever. And even in this country, ask those senators the tough questions, ask leaders the tough questions, hold them accountable. This is not a job that you take if you want to be liked. It's not a job to take if you want to be part of the club of those who you're reporting on. And that takes courage. It just does. And then when you have to incisively understand what you're reporting on and call it like it is, that also takes courage. There were many people who wrote in Bosnia or who reported in Bosnia that all sides were equally guilty. And unfortunately, that was the path of least resistance because world leaders didn't want to do anything. And so the narrative was put out that this was just, an ancient ethnic conflict, centuries of hatred, all sides equally guilty. Well, none of that was true. All sides were not equally guilty. There were many, many years when all sides lived harmoniously together. But it was tough to say, no, there is a victim and there's an aggressor. And we're not going to equate the two. We are not, in order to make you feel comfortable, draw a moral equivalence. We're not going to say the sniper is the equal to the person who's been killed. We're not going to say that the rapist is equal to the victim. People wanted us to say that. It sounds crazy, but that's what people wanted us to do. And those of us who did not were accused of taking sides. You have to be brave enough to stand up and say, this is the truth. We're not taking sides. We don't have a political agenda. We just tell the truth. That's what we do. That is our job. And again, that is a risky business, telling the truth. But if we don't, there's not much point. And then I say to people, whatever it is you decide to do, and especially if it's journalism, decide not just to do well for yourself, but to do good for your community, for your family, for your country, and for humanity. And I do believe that that can happen in whatever profession, whether it's the arts, the sciences, whether it's medicine, whatever it might be. Go out and do as good as you do well. And I think that's so important because for me, when I was young, all of this, and I'm sure all of us who've been in this position of being young and growing up and questioning what we're doing and sort of evolving our thoughts, I think we all come to these questions and conclusions. How do you do what you do? How do you make it worthwhile? How do you make it relevant? And I think that that's the joy and that's the purpose in whatever any of us decide to take on. Because, you read over and over again that, it's not just money that makes you happy. I mean, this incredible statistic about how a certain threshold of income is very important for happiness and to be able to, meet your obligations, keep your family together, keep body and soul together. But the threshold is relatively achievable, and beyond that, people have seen that there isn't that exponential growth in happiness. And I think that's really, really instructive, that happiness has got so much more to do with many, many other indicators than just with making money. And, you know, to bring this full circle before we throw this open to questions from the floor, Marie, who we honor every day, and who I'm so happy is going to have an international reporting center named after her, was, to those of us who knew her, and I wasn't her closest friend, and I didn't know her that well out of the field, but every time I saw her in the field, she was happy, despite the sorrow, despite the stress, despite all the things that can really be so difficult when you're doing this job, you know, 24/7. She was happy doing this job because she knew why she was doing it. And that, I think, is the most important gift and the most important lesson. And it's one that she has taught me just by observing her. And it's one that I hope all of you and all of the people who are able to come through this center will be able to take away. Happy and proud to make a difference. Thank you very much indeed. Absolutely. Everybody come to the mics. Don't rush all at once. Come on, now you can ask me some questions about anything, about Marie, and if I don't know, I will ask her family, about journalism, about life, about the world. Okay, you're going to be brave, Old Navy.
Exactly.
Tell me your name and what you do.
My name is Ethan Friedman. I'm a journalism major
Okay,
here.
get into the mic there.
Oh, There we go. I wanted to ask you about moral equivalency. Do you think that a lot of times, especially on cable news, in politics, in reporting, even let's say in the Middle East or reporting from anywhere, that this is all too prevalent?
Yes, and I love that question. I love it because it came at me when I was very young and I was just knocked for a loop when people started to accuse me of taking sides in Bosnia. And I didn't know what to do because I said, oh my gosh, you know, our golden rule is to be objective. And then I suddenly realized that actually, what does objectivity mean? It means giving all sides a fair hearing, but it doesn't mean treating all sides equally. I explained a little bit, you don't equate the victim and the aggressor. But beyond that, you don't create a false moral equivalence, particularly in the most grievous instances of violation of international law. And the highest violation of international law is genocide. And had I done that in the genocide that was happening in Bosnia, I would have been an accessory. I would have been saying that this is all the same. And I realized that very quickly. So it took criticism for me to try to understand what it means. And from then on, I've been totally clear. You tell the truth. And I think, you know, this is on one extreme when you're talking about humanitarian law and violations of human rights and all of that. But even in daily life, when you are doing political reporting or whatever reporting it is, you have to be able to tell the truth. You know, and sometimes the truth has one side. And you have to be able to say that. And you can't just use your platform as a megaphone for a bunch of opposing sides. I mean, that's not journalism. That's just, okay, come up on this platform and you say your bit and somebody else says their bit. No, you've got to be able to tell the truth and cut through it. You know, present all sides, but then make sure you tell the truth. And I tell you, there was a very interesting, I mean, I don't want to get into the controversy over guns and this and that, but this terrible, terrible thing that we're all still reeling from that happened in Newtown just before Christmas. Well, you've all probably seen the hearings on Capitol Hill. And I was just thinking, you know, how we could have done a program on this on our air. They had the various experts testifying. There was Mark Kelly, who was Gabby Gifford's husband. There was Wayne Lapierre, who's the head of the NRA. And then there were several other experts. One of these experts was a woman, and she was there to say that actually guns in the home protect women. And I don't think anybody picked that up that day. The next couple of days, I was reading the New York Times, and there was a full editorial dissecting that statement. And I think that's our role. That our role is to listen to what people are saying and then fact check, be the accountability. I mean, if we're trying to figure out, and many different news organizations are trying to figure out, how do you remain relevant in today's fragmenting news environment? I think you remain relevant by being the center of truth and fact, and by holding everybody accountable on what people say and fact checking. So I think that is a really even more important now than it's ever been, since there's so much opportunity for people to just keep screaming and shouting their own points of view and sticking to their talking points, and never getting shaken up and say, oh, come on now, answer this question and this question. And I tell you, when I was doing the Sunday program on ABC, I used to commute back and forth from New York to Washington. And when I would come out and from the show and then go through the airports, people would stop me and they would say, no, hammer those people, ask them these questions. When they say that, tell them no. We want you to hold our leaders accountable.
They want conflict. They want conflict. Conflict.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
No, I think they want the truth. I think our bosses want conflict. Some.
Hi.
Yes.
My name's Alexa. I'm a senior, and I'm about to graduate, hopefully. So my question for you is, between you and Marie Colvin, you guys are pretty much the epitome of what a lot of young female reporters want to be. So when you're going into these countries where it's not necessarily equal, do you ever feel like people don't take you seriously? And I guess to follow that, do you see yourself as a female journalist or a journalist?
I see myself as a journalist, and I think that's a really good question. A lot of young women ask me that same question. I'm sure Marie had it over and over again. How do you do this in a male-dominated sphere? Well, Dean Howie told me a few minutes ago before we came on, didn't you say that 65% of journalists today in America are women? The students in journalism school are women. And I'm seeing that in the field, that there are so many journalists who are women now, whether they're in front of the camera, whether they're writing, or whether they're taking the pictures, or wherever they are, there are so many women in the field. And this is a big change since I started, and it's obviously great. I don't know what the difference is. We're still trying to figure out why this is the case. But many have asked me as well, when you go to Saudi Arabia or to any of these places, Afghanistan, Iran, etc., are you at a disadvantage? You could be, but then you don't have to be. There's some places that force you to wear the scarf and you have to do it and it's a pain in the neck and blah, blah, blah. But in these places, I've discovered, where there is this incredibly difficult relationship between men and women, often women get into the story because, for instance, a mother and her children won't allow a strange man in. So that's been my experience, that I have got my foot in the door many, many more times than I've had the door slammed in my face. And I do think it's because I'm a woman, for many, many reasons. But to be able to tell the human story of war and conflict and crisis and disaster, or just life, so many places feel that it's less threatening to let a woman in. It doesn't violate their religious principles, or whatever it might be. And that's why I genuinely have found that it's been an advantage and not a disadvantage for me. On the other hand, I will not play down the risks that women face, sexual assault against women, the idea that, you can be potentially treated less seriously, but then, so there are risks and dangers. But in general, if you do the scales, it's much, much more an advantage, I've found.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Go for it.
Hi, my name is Mike Peterson. I'm a senior journalism major. I just want to ask your opinion on a new development I read this morning. The Sunday Times actually is deciding to, reject photos from freelance journalists in Syria, saying the cost and the risk in order to get the photos is too great for actually getting the photos. I know you've been talking about how these are stories that need to be told, so I was just wondering how you'd weigh in on that.
Is this the New York Sunday Times?
No.
You tell me, Kat, you tell us, because I hadn't heard this. Come up here. Or go to the mic, whatever you'd like. Come up here, Kat. Come up here. Yes. It's Marie's sister, Kat. You tell us.
Hello. I think it would be more accurate to say they are not going to be publishing photos and stories from inexperienced stringers, not all freelancers, but it's young journalists who haven't yet had experience enough to be able to handle themselves in a dangerous situation. And I'm actually very happy that they're taking that position. They felt it would encourage inexperienced journalists to get themselves into situations more dangerous than they were able to handle, or wouldn't have the judgment to realize the danger they were facing.
I don't want to put you on the spot, but here you are with the microphone. Do you want to say anything about this event, about what you hope for the school?
About the event, we're just absolutely thrilled. I couldn't imagine a more perfect tribute to Marie, because she believed so strongly in helping, mentoring young people, and I have had the benefit of that my whole life, and I'm very happy that it'll be carried on. And I really appreciate you being here so much, because
I'm delighted.
you make the kickoff the best it could possibly be.
It's fantastic. Maybe you want to answer some more questions?
Well, I'll try to help.
Okay. Kat's going to help me now.
I'm a corporate lawyer.
Yeah,
so.
she's going to help me answer some questions. Over there.
Hi, how are you doing? Abhilash Matthew, class of 2010. I am not a journalism major, but I followed your news of Osama, and you had a privilege of interviewing him. And ever since that time, I grew up in Saudi Arabia, so I've been a big fan of you. I guess I just have one small question, really nothing to do with journalism, but you said in your comments about young people shouldn't feel entitled. You pretty much work your way up. And from the way I saw you, I feel like you're a really, a humble person. And what makes you, or rather what keeps you humble? I just want to know that.
Well, I think it's something that I can answer and you can answer, I suppose, for Marie. Look, I'm not going to characterize myself as one thing or another, but I've seen enough around the world to know that, pride goes before a fall. I've seen too many colleagues who have thought that they have had it all and it's all been dissipated. I've seen too much of the world to know that nothing really happens unless you give your heart, your dedication, and your hard work, and unless you respect all the people around you. And I sometimes say to college students, when you get to where you want to go, don't fall into the mini dictator syndrome. I am always amazed by how people suddenly decide that suddenly they're God for no good reason, which takes nothing away from people's accomplishment. You just have to stay grounded. And I do think, and I think you can talk to this, Marie was grounded.
Marie always thought she could say it better, do it better, rework it. She was, I wouldn't say humble is the right word, but she held herself to a high standard and always worked very hard, always thought it was easier for everyone else. She always felt she had to work very hard to bring home to people the horror of war. She thought if she could write it better, maybe they would care more. And she struggled with that.
Yeah, you just keep trying to do better, and, keep your head and your ego in check. Check it at the door.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Amir. I'm an electrical engineering major. We all know that media plays a very powerful and significant role in times of war. But I wonder if media has ever been able to stop a war, especially the recent war in Iraq.
Did you say solve?
Stop.
Stop. Well, this is something that, myself, Marie, many people, and you've probably heard her say it many, many times, have struggled with. No. Can we stop it? No. But I do believe that in certain instances, journalists have had mitigating effect on wars just by simply telling the truth and making it, particularly in our countries. We live here in a democracy. Our leaders are elected. They believe in human rights. They believe in all the values that are so special. And these values are being destroyed every second in these wars. And after a while, you just can't just keep turning your head away. You have to do something about it.
People can stop a war.
Yeah.
And if they don't know what's going on, and I think that's what Marie was always trying to do, was to get people's attention, let them know what was happening so they wouldn't stop it, not that she would.
It's true. And Marie's colleague from Sunday Telegraph there just reminded me that they were together in Sierra Leone, which was many, many years ago, around the year 2000, when there was a terrible, terrible warlords, civil war, kids being, their arms being amputated, all these child soldiers, this and that. That went on for quite a long time until actually the British Prime Minister, Tony Blair, decided enough is enough. And very quietly, without a huge hullabaloo, went in there and it stopped. And things are better. I mean, there really is a cause and effect. There really is a cause and effect. That's why I just want to die every time I hear that if we intervene, what can we do? What can we do? What can we do? Well, there's plenty that can be done. And I just have a really hard time, particularly on a night tonight, like we've seen that Marie lost her life telling that story, and many of our colleagues there have been wounded and killed, and some are missing still. And to hear leaders still saying, we can't intervene, we can't make a difference. They're wrong. They are just wrong. And they're responsible for a lot of bloodshed.
Hi, I'm Ken. I'm just a very fine admirer of great journalism. And I've loved you on NPR, and I used to just crank up that radio all the time. And when you would sign off, I used to hear your name as, that's the truth. So I want to thank you very much, first of all, for all of your great work. But my question is I hear so many interviews with leaders, and I see these journalists letting them get away with such horrible answers. And I know you know the truth, and I know you've done your homework, and I know it's because you can't, and you need to get back in another time to go a second round. So my question is, even though I hate people that accept those answers, you know better. How do you cope with that? Because you must be constantly balancing that with your conscience and with the responses.
I mean, I have to tell you that I don't think about that anymore. I really don't. I don't care if I'm banned anymore. I've been banned many, many times, and I just don't care. I just don't care. It's not the fear of being banned for me, it's the fear of not asking the right question. That is what keeps me up at night. And many times I don't get the right question, and many times I, maybe don't know everything in order to be able to come back at that person, but many times I do. And I come back at them, and again, that is a really important area of knowledge. You have to have knowledge in order to be an interviewer, because those people have knowledge, and they also have their talking points, and they're used to, steamrolling over people. So you can't just go with no knowledge and sit in front of a president or a prime minister or a warlord or whoever it is, because, as you say, I mean, it just doesn't work. There's no accountability. So that's another thing, that a school like this, a center like this, has to force the people who you teach to really know what it is, they're doing, what they're looking at, and to know all the questions to ask.
And the history.
Yeah.
I mean, I just had the awful job of closing up Marie's house, and the number of books on Middle East history, on Arafat, on all her areas of interest, along with just sort of fiction. But her library was phenomenal, and the books were carefully read through many times.
Yeah.
It's just the substantive knowledge of the area you're reporting on is so important.
Yeah, no, there's no substitute for that. So that's a very, very good question.
My name is Bob, and I graduated many years ago.
No.
Yeah. You spoke about the situation in Syria. We have Mr. Ahmadinejad and the threat of nuclear weapons potentially. The United States and a few other countries always seem to get involved in every situation. I personally have no use for the United Nations. Would you care to comment on that?
I just say the United Nations is only the sum of its parts. So the United States is the United Nations. France is the United Nations. And actually, you need to know that because it's a really good excuse when people want to blame, for not doing anything or doing too much. There is no United Nations. The countries, the member countries make up the United Nations. So I think that's really important. Having said that, because of that, there is quite a lot of inertia and bureaucracy because everybody has to be in a consensus, and that's why we're not seeing anything in Syria. Although, to be honest with you, sometimes I think in this case it's an excuse. People, countries who don't want to intervene are hiding behind the fact that the Russians and the Chinese won't allow them to intervene. I think that, that's my answer on the United Nations, but in terms of, what was the other question?
No, that was it.
That was it? Okay, good.
Thank you.
Good.
Hi, my name is Dan Leibel. I'm a sophomore journalism major right now, so thank you for coming. So, especially coming out of Syria, there's a lot of civilian journalism, as it's called, cell phone videos portraying these bloody scenes. And I would like to know what the role of this amateur or civilian journalism is on foreign correspondence.
Well, look at me. No, I won't. I'll just say one thing, but I want you to talk a little bit about what Marie did out there because she was a professional journalist, and you know what she did. It's good and it's difficult because obviously there's a plethora, there's a wealth of information, but the real problem is how do you verify, how do you fact check, how do those of us who are outside know that so-and-so who's tweeting or so-and-so who's posting on YouTube, what exactly it is. I mean, often you can know, often you can double check, but often you can't, and we've all collectively been in trouble when we've used things that are not necessarily true. Sometimes in Syria, but I'll just give you the example of the Green Revolution in Iran in 2009. There was this whole idea that all of this tweeting and stuff was going on from inside Iran. It's going to be a revolution, the Twitter revolution, this, that, and the other. And it turned out afterwards that a lot of the investigation into who actually was tweeting, what was going on, a lot of it was coming from the Iranian expat community outside Iran. So that gave a bit of a distorted view of the situation at the time. And I remember because I was there, and I was busy reporting something, and all of a sudden I would see that something else was being said on social media, on Twitter, and I, for a while, couldn't figure out what was going on. So, it's good, but there also, you have to be careful in the whole fact-checking. But, Maria is a perfect example of the power of what a real journalist, many of these are real journalists, I'm not saying that, but what a accredited, credible, experienced, known journalist can do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Really, because what do people look at? What is our value added? It's not because we're so fabulous, it's because there's a track record. So people who are used to reading the Sunday Times know that when you open the newspaper and you see Marie Colvin's byline, you know you're getting the full story. You're getting the truth, you're getting all the color, you're getting her her legwork from going everywhere into every corner of whatever story she might be in. And so you're getting this, huge amount of years of experience put into telling you this story. And you don't know what X and Y tweet or Facebook or whatever's saying because they're in it, and a lot of them are, it's their war. So their sides, and their political, situations going on. So it's something that we all have to be quite careful about these days, how to filter that, and it's not always easy.
Thank you.
Hello, Christiane. Thank you so much for coming to Stony Brook. This is fantastic. My name's Karen. I'm a staff member at the university, and I wanted to bring you back to 2001. We just had a student ask you a question about the media's power to stop war, but I'm curious to know the media's power to start a war, to begin a war. And particularly, I remember watching CNN every single night after the 9/11 attacks. And I was watching Aaron Brown and Paul night. And at some point the dialogue turned to Iraq. And every single night it was Iraq, what about Iraq, what about Iraq? Hans Blixer, the UN, they need to go in and do WMD inspections. And I was puzzled because we kept being told that the attacks were coming out of Afghanistan. So I kept wondering, why did they keep talking about Iraq?
Right.
So I want to know, was that being driven out of Washington, or was the media the ones really behind that, driving the U.S. to go to Iraq?
You know, I don't. It wasn't the media who started. And Marie was in Iraq.
Yeah.
She was in Iraq, and she obviously did fantastic work. I mean, you know, the story of what happened after 9/11 has been told many, many times, and it is not a salutary story. The media, in my view, and I got into a lot of trouble for saying this, enabled the war by not asking the tough, contributed to enabling the war by not asking the tough questions at the right time. Our job at news conferences or at interviews or whatever is to keep asking the tough and rigorous questions. Again, to hold people to account. If you say X has this, okay, show me, what, where's the proof? And that was not going on. And there's many reasons for it. 9/11 was so shocking. It discombobulated this country in a huge and massive way. There was a desire to go after, obviously, the perpetrators, and they did that in Afghanistan. That was, in my opinion, the right course of action. Not just to go after Al-Qaeda and the Taliban, but actually to give a chance to the Afghan people to get out of that tyranny. And to be frank, I think it would have worked. I don't think they did it right. Now we're about to get out in 2014. It's not been done right. But that's a whole nother question. Iraq is a different issue. And I do believe that there was a political agenda to do that. And the role that journalists are meant to play, question, that's all. Question. That's all. Ask the questions. Don't make speeches. Don't put your opinion. Don't be political. Keep asking the questions. And it wasn't done. I'll give you one little example. There was a story which was actually quite definitive in the New York Times shortly before the war. It was about, you may remember, aluminium or aluminum things. And it was written that these could have been used for centrifuges, for nuclear weapons production. And that was taken as gospel. And that sort of was added to the case against Saddam Hussein. You know, I basically found out what it was for, and it was for conventional weapons, and I said that. But by that time, you know, the tsunami of pro-war rhetoric was very, very high. And it's, you know, all you have to do is go and read all the mea culpas from all the major newspapers and news organizations to see, you know, to see what happened. Yeah.
I don't want to take up my time, but because I can hear you making the case for somebody to go into Syria and help what's going on there. President Bush was turned into a villain, so if President Obama sends troops or some kind of help to the people of Syria, could the same thing end up backfiring on them? And the U.S. again is seen as this like evil empire.
I'm sure they think a little bit of that, but you know, not every situation is the same.
We have time for about 2 more questions.
Hi, my name is Miriam. I just wanted to say that as a fellow Iranian, you're an inspiration. And I was wondering your thoughts on the future of the Iranian regime and whether you think there is a chance for a democratic and fair government there.
You know, there was a major attempt in 2009. The revolutionaries or whatever were not supported in this country. Repression works. The Iranians pulled out the thugs and forced people back off the streets. They were not ready yet to come out and pay the ultimate price like happened in parts of the Arab Spring. Right now, the huge amount of international sanctions against Iran's nuclear program are more and more hurting ordinary people, making them less and less able to stand up against the regime, and the regime is becoming more and more militarized, so that everything in Iran is becoming a security threat now. Everything is framed inside Iran in a security framework, so that the Revolutionary Guards are getting more and more power. So right now, I think the status quo for the moment. One more question to Kat about Marie.
Hello, my name is John Fisher. I am a junior here at Stony Brook and a journalism major. First of all, thank you so much for being here. I know that this is a great honor for me as well as for everyone else here in this audience. I wanted to ask, and you were talking about this in your speech, how exactly do you address fear when you're in dangerous situations? How exactly do you say to yourself, okay, I'm here, here's what I have to do? How do you remain calm? And through your experiences, do you think it ever gets easier? Do you think the fear ever minimizes or is reduced in any way?
Well, I learned from people like Marie, I don't think it gets easier, but I think you develop, a bit more of a sixth sense. I mean, you just get more experience. But I do want you to talk about that, because this was part of her life and therefore part of your life and your family's life all through her career.
Well,
the fear, dealing with it.
Something you said in your speech about the fear of the family, I've never experienced, and I was shocked when she was killed because I always thought she was indestructible. So I know my mom worried daily. But the way Marie dealt with fear in the battlefield, and I know this from many people from her stories, was a sense of humor. And I don't know that everyone does that, but she would, laugh her way literally through minefields with snipers shooting. I was with Paul Conroy recently, who, we were rolling around talking about how they laughed their way through these terrifying situations. So I think that was her way of dealing. I don't think it's everyone's way of dealing with it. But the other thing I wanted to just mention about that sixth sense, Marie definitely had that. When she went into Syria, she went in very well aware of the danger and that she was putting her life at risk. But there were situations she refused to go into. Several opportunities she had to go in, she just said, it's not good, I'm not going. The story's not worth it. There was the Somali pirates that invited her back to their town, and she just said, it's just not going. So I think it's a combination of experience and that sort of blink, sixth sense, and in her case, a sense of humor. I'm sure in other cases, the support of your colleagues, but.
Absolutely, and the support of a great family. Honestly, none of us would be here without you tonight. It's really been extraordinary. Thank you for coming up here. Thank you for being so generous.
And to Howie and Alana, you've just done
really.
so much.
Thank you, everybody.
So it would have been enough if Christiane came here tonight and, through her generosity, talked to us. It would have been enough if she had given us the support and encouragement to start the center, but she's done something else. So I would like to tell you tonight that Christiane has donated $50,000 to the Colvin Center. And I'm happy to tell you that money will be matched by the Jim Simons money, which means that it will be $100,000. And if you look at these brochures that you all have that we gave you about the center, you will have the opportunity to add another $50,000. But you can take a look at these brochures. It'll tell you a lot about the center, how you can help, whether it's donating or something else. If you want to know what some of this money will do, you can also go to the School of Journalism website and see, beginning today, what 16 of our students did recently in Kenya and the work they did. And I think you will be very impressed, and we are very proud of what they've done. So please now, in conclusion, please join with me in wishing Christiane safe passage and great success in her career moving forward. And thank you very much. Thank you.